What are the chances that Orban pulls a January 6th?
I have been telling all of the international journalists who are headed here for the election that they should plan to stick around for at least a few days after April 12th, because this is not going to be decided, I think, just on the day of the voting.
The upcoming elections in Hungary promise to be very interesting. It seems like for perhaps maybe the first or second time in the political career of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, he's facing a really stiff challenge. It seems that even in the polls, he is appearing to be losing to the opposition. I'm Borzu Deragahi. This is the Badlands podcast. You can subscribe to my podcast and my newsletter at borzou.substack.com. I'm here today with Professor Marc Lousteau of the Central European University. He is a specialist on Hungary and its democratic aspirations and its attempts to fend off in a way, Viktor Orban is kind of one of the OGs of this right-wing populist surge that we're seeing in the West. And, his defeat would be rather momentous. So I think it's a very important story. And I'm going to let Marc just talk a little bit about what is happening. And can you just also explain where you are right now? Are you in Vienna or are you in Hungary at this point? And if you could just briefly provide an overview for people who are maybe not following as closely, what is actually happening in Hungary and why it is that this man, Viktor Orban, is facing the political fight of his life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually based in Budapest, Hungary, at the Central European University's Institute for Advanced Studies. So I've been following the Hungarian election on the ground here in Budapest, as well as traveling out and around to the various different towns and villages and smaller cities in the country, following the campaigns, following the candidates as they make their final push, final appeal to the voters. The election really is a historic one here in Hungary, and it's attracted significant attention not only in Europe, but in North America and Asia, and really all around the world for many of the reasons that you outlined. Viktor Orban, who has been in power here in Hungary since 2010 for 16 years, really, as you put it, is the OG authoritarian. He developed the model, the playbook that we see playing out in the United States under the second Trump administration. And you could certainly predict that it would happen in France if Marine Le Pen were to win in next year's election. So really, the authoritarian model that Hungary has developed under Viktor Orban is easily exportable, has been exported, and really could be exported to a country near you sometime soon in the future. So it stands to reason why so much international attention has been focused on this election.
Who is the challenger? Is it some, radical left-wing, liberal, Green Party kind of figure, or is it someone, more conventional in terms of his political stances?
Well, Ed, I would say the exact opposite of the radical left-leaning, left-wing figure. The upstart challenger is actually a former party insider from Viktor Orban's party who broke very publicly with the party just about 2 years ago. So he's a real newcomer on the political stage. In fact, very few people even knew his name or knew anything about him before he gave a really landmark interview to the opposition press about 2 years ago in February of 2024, after a major scandal broke involving a presidential pardon for a party insider who was convicted of papering over or ignoring a sexual abuse scandal in an orphanage here in Hungary. And so Peter Magyar, who is this outsider, former insider, now outsider candidate, opposition candidate, went to an opposition TV studio and denounced the government over its pardon for this figure.
So Peter Magyar, basically his name is Peter Hungarian. So
that irony is not lost on many people here in the country. The last name Magyar in Hungarian just means Hungarian.
Yeah.
And he certainly has pitched himself as a right-wing nationalistic figure. He is not at all afraid of hitting many of the sort of right-wing nationalist themes and notes that Viktor Orban has hit in his 16 years in power. Peter Magyar has really presented himself as uh, Orbanism without Viktor Orban, sort of the same sort of politics that Viktor Orban promised Hungary 16 years ago, a right-wing economic orientation, a right-wing foreign policy orientation, a certain element of Euroscepticism,
Mm.
but just Peter Magyar wants to say, and he has said over the last 2 years of his campaign, he said, I will govern like Viktor Orban promised to govern, just without the corruption and without the cozying up to Vladimir Putin and the Russian
Interesting.
regime.
So in a way, it's like as if J.D. Vance broke away and said, "Look, I'm a version of Trumpism. I'm MAGA without the pardons and the sweetheart deals and the son-in-law going around the Gulf making deal cash deals and so on." I think that's basically a way of understanding it.
That is a way of understanding it. I'm not so sure that J.D. Vance would ever make that kind of
Yeah.
move. It takes real political chutzpah, it takes real political guts to break with a party like
Yeah.
that. I'm not so sure J.D. Vance has that kind of political guts. Um, but certainly Peter Magyar took a chance, and it's so far it's played out for him. He is in fact leading in the polls, and that lead seems to be actually growing over the last 2 weeks. That's the latest polling information that was just published over the last several days, shows that his party, which is called the TISA party, which is the name of a river here in Hungary, the TISA party, up until about 2 months ago, averaged between a 7 and 11% lead in the national polls. And it varied depending upon who was polling and where, but all the independent polls not put out by government allied institutes showed between 7 and 11%. And now that number seems to be even growing larger, maybe even reaching 13%. So it seems like the late breaking voters are even now moving away from the government, away from Viktor Orban, and towards the opposition.
Can you say that whether the leftists and the liberals and the green types are they rallying around Peter Magyar as well, or are they voting for other parties? Is there a chance of a split vote?
I think everybody in the country sees this as the last best attempt, opportunity to unseat Viktor Orban from power. And so all of the left wing, all of the Green Party affiliates, all of the people who sort of tried to carry the flag for a more socialist, left-leaning political perspective in Hungary, they have all bowed out of the race. They're not running candidates. They have decided to cast their lot
Yes.
with Peter Magyar, and perhaps in the hopes that they might be able to hold him to account should he end up in power later on down the line.
I just if you could for just a little bit, if you could describe this guy's character and biography and so on. Is he a businessman, a real estate developer, or is he a professional politician? What would you say about Peter Magyar?
He's a professional politician who grew up within the system that Viktor Orban created. Orban has been in power for 16 years. Peter Magyar is in his early 40s. He's never really known, other than when he was a teenager, Peter Magyar, he's never really known a system other than the system that Orban created. And so he's clearly a very talented, very disciplined political operative. But he absolutely was a career politician and lived and moved within the ranks of Fidesz and Viktor Orban, Fidesz's Viktor Orban's political party, within Fidesz institutions all throughout his life. He was married to the Minister of Justice, which another very high-ranking official, before they divorced amid this break that Peter Magyar took with the party 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, in fact, he had very close ties, both personal and professional, to Viktor Orban's circles. And then when he saw that the time was right, when he saw that, as he would probably put it, when he got fed up with the cronyism and the corruption of the Fidesz regime, he decided to step out on his own. And so far, it's played well for him.
Crazily. I know that Viktor Orban is always whining about foreign interference and George Soros and all that, and yet he accepted the endorsement and even a visit from the U.S. administration to come and give him a boost. Is that correct? What are the stakes for Europe in general, and how are the other world and regional powers interfering? You have a confluence of, I guess, Russia and the U.S. administrations want this guy to win, want Viktor Orban to remain in power. And how about the EU? Are they getting any skin in the game, or are they just staying their true diffident, idiotic selves?
Diffident and idiotic, those are strong words, but certainly Europe has major skin in the game. Whenever it comes to Russian influence on the continent, Europe needs to stand up and discover some of its own agency, which is, a challenge for Europe to do, the EU to do in any number of policy areas. But absolutely, I think the person who has the most interest in keeping Viktor Orban in power is Vladimir Putin. Uh, Over the past several weeks, there have been some major revelations of foreign policy contacts, high-level foreign policy contacts between Vladimir Putin's government and the Hungarian government, including regular telephone calls from Peter Magyar, who is the Hungarian foreign minister, and Sergei Lavrov, who is the Russian foreign minister, discussing top secret issues, top secret information from the inside of high-level European Union foreign policy talks, foreign policy discussions and debates. So here you have, Hungary basically leaking top secret information to Europe's greatest adversary right now, the Russian government, on a regular basis. It was extremely damaging to Hungary's reputation. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Donald Tusk from Poland both denounced Hungary's government and warned of serious consequences as a result. But of course, waiting until after April 12th, which is the date of the elections, to levy those serious consequences, and only if Viktor Orban does manage to stay in power. So it's really clear that Vladimir Putin is going to do everything possible to keep his closest ally in Europe in office, and that being Viktor Orban. I wouldn't. I've sort of shifted away from calling Viktor Orban Vladimir Putin's closest ally. I think of him more as a secret agent within Europe, operating on behalf of Vladimir Putin. It's really clear that Viktor Orban is not just, a friend and a confidant of Vladimir Putin's regime, but really an agent, even a spokesperson of the Kremlin in Europe. There's some real dubious, nefarious stuff going on in relations between Hungary and Russia. Now, when it comes to America's involvement and the Trump administration's involvement, Trump has given full-throated endorsements, but only on paper and only on X or Twitter. The only way that I see the American administration actually making a difference in helping Viktor Orban stay in power is if Donald Trump were to come here himself. And that does not seem to be in the offing. Marco Rubio, who, to be honest, is a toady and a lickspittle. He has absolutely no say in this administration. He is the lower man on the totem pole when it comes to influence within the Trump administration. Marco Rubio came to Hungary, but that was really more of an insult than anything else. An insult because of how
low level he was,
unpowerful, how lacking in influence Rubio really is in the Trump administration. Now, it seems that J.D. Vance is also on his way here next week. But again, I don't think many people in Hungary, especially in the countryside and the villages where this election really is going to be decided, I don't think anybody knows who J.D. Vance is. And he's not exactly the most charismatic campaigner to begin with. In the absence of Donald Trump, I don't see American involvement in this election doing much good for Viktor Orban.
I imagine that turnout will be a huge issue in the elections. But I imagine, given the stakes, turnout will be high no matter what how the election is. But what about swing voters? You mentioned the people in the countryside who will be deciding the election. What are the other swing constituencies in Hungary?
It seems to me that the people who have really abandoned Fidesz and Viktor Orban in this election cycle are a specific constituency in the countryside. Here, this the educated professional elite in the small towns and villages, the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the professors who live in the smaller settlements. They are the ones who have abandoned Viktor Orban because they are the ones who are upwardly mobile and aspirational and ambitious, not just for themselves, but also for their children, especially. And they have seen their living standards decrease over the last 5 or 6 years. They have realized that their kids are not going to get ahead unless they manage to have some amazingly super secret high level connection in the Hungarian government. They are the ones who have really suffered the most from the rampant corruption and cronyism of the Viktor Orban regime. And so when you go out to the countryside, and I followed around Peter Magyar's opposition campaign, he has not set foot inside Budapest except for
Wow.
special occasions and events, I would say in the last 16 months. He has exclusively stuck to visiting these small towns and villages where he addresses the specific concerns of these kind of local elites. And he talks about potholes in the roads. He talks about the decaying state of infrastructure of trains and mass transit. He talks about decaying hospitals. And if you think about who's driving on the roads, who are the people who own the cars, who drive on the potholes and have to avoid them and dodge them every 20 or 30 meters or so on the roads, that's the local elites. Those are the people who own the cars. So he's really targeting his message to a specific constituency that he senses are ready and just waiting to abandon Fidesz and Viktor Orban.
What are the chances that Orban pulls a January 6th? He loses the election and somehow tries to find some extra constitutional way of staying in power. Is that a possibility?
I have been telling all of the international journalists who are headed here for the election that they should plan to stick around for at least a few days after April 12th, because this is not going to be decided, I think, just on the day of the voting. I fear, I wouldn't say I anticipate, I fear the possibility that if it's a close election, if it's decided by just one or two or three constituencies out in the countryside, we could see some vigilante action
Mm.
on the part of Viktor Orban supporters. I fear the possibility of a Russian engineered false flag operation that could create not a legal state of emergency, but rather sort of an emotional state of emergency in the country that Viktor Orban could use to swing voters back into his camp. Um, there are lots of, just here on the ground in Budapest, the rumors are swinging wildly. They are flowing like water out of a fire hose about what could happen in the days leading up to and the days after the election. And absolutely, I would not put it past Viktor Orban, who, from the outside, at least from my perspective, and this is the way it seems to me from the news, he is desperately trying to stay in power. He is desperate to keep hold of the government as he's controlled it over the last 16 years. I would not be surprised if some serious dirty tricks took place between now and the election and even afterwards.
And if he does go away, if he is deposed, what will it mean for NATO and the EU? I guess he does do a lot of obstruction of the NATO effort in Ukraine, for example. He also, seems to block a lot of initiatives in the EU from taking hold. Can you speak just a little bit about what would be the changes that one could see continent-wide if this were to happen?
So, in the first place, you're absolutely right that Viktor Orban, in his role as the Kremlin secret agent within the EU, has blocked many initiatives to support Ukraine over the last 4 years since the full-scale invasion of 2022, including currently blocking a 90 billion euro aid package that Ukraine desperately needs. And Hungary has said that it's going to block it. Viktor Orban has very publicly announced his intention to prevent Ukraine from getting that desperately needed money, at least through April 12th and the election. So he's certainly done his level best, Viktor Orban has, to make certain that Vladimir Putin's will and wishes are done within the EU. Now, should Peter Magyar actually take the control of the government here, it's a bit of the million dollar question. What will happen? I mean, reading the tea leaves and reading the future is always a difficult and dangerous proposition. But my sense is that we're not going to get a full 180. We're not going to suddenly discover that Peter Magyar is the most pro-Europe, pro-Western politician Hungary's ever produced. That's not how he's presented himself. And I don't think that would actually endear him to a Hungarian public that has now had 16 years of pro-Russia propaganda pointed at it through the official government media systems that are operating here in Hungary. So I don't think Peter Magyar will go in that direction. I think he'll combine a certain public element of Euroscepticism. Maybe you'd even call it Euro realism. And he'll certainly, I think, play well with the more conservative parties in the European Parliament. His TISA party is actually affiliated with the European People's Party, the EPP, in the European Parliament. And certainly, he's given every signal that he's going to stay in that lane, sort of a right-leaning lane within European politics.
So, how about the Hungarian ethnic minorities in like Ukraine and Romania? Is he addressing that very sensitive issue?
Hungarian minority group in Western Ukraine in the Transcarpathia region. And Peter Magyar went and visited them last summer and met with some of their leaders and signaled that he's very willing to step up and criticize Ukraine's government if he feels that the government is mistreating this Hungarian minority population. He said he's willing to do that in Romania, in Serbia, and Slovakia as well. And so I don't think that we're going to see an end to tensions between Hungary and its neighbors should Peter Magyar win. I think what we'll see is that Peter Magyar will use the levers that are made available by the European Union to resolve those kinds of tensions, to ease those tensions and solve those conflicts, not the levers that have been afforded Hungary by Russia. And those levers, what I mean there is violence, invasion, war, and death. Certainly, I think that is a major benefit to Europe's future, is if Peter Magyar turns back to diplomacy as a way of solving issues between neighboring countries on the European continent.
What about the US? Is this a blow for the Trump administration if this were to happen? And I guess more broadly, I guess if he is defeated, will it have implications for elections in France and the UK?
I also get concerned when I think about how this election could play out. I get concerned by the lessons that American politicians could learn from Viktor Orban should he actually manage to stay in power.
Right.
Because the real question to my mind is not what dirty tricks will he use, but what dirty tricks will Europe let him get away with? What dirty tricks will Viktor Orban use? And then how will Europe respond? Will they levy real, actual consequences? Or will they again send a message that dismantling democracy is really not a very risky endeavor? And in fact, the world's powers are going to look the other way should one more democracy fall to pieces on the world stage. And so I really worry that the Trump administration, especially, could look to Hungary for again as a playbook for how to prevent a loss of power should the will of the people decide that an authoritarian needs to go. And that I worry that Trump I don't think has enough attention span to care about his foreign allies. But I worry about the JD Vances, and I worry about the people under JD Vance who pay a lot of attention to Hungary, have mirrored and copied some of the policies that Hungary has implemented here over the last 16 years, and could see a way to prevent in America a free and fair election from taking place in November, which is the next national level election for America's Congress, for the U.S. Congress. That's when the next national level election for the Congress will take place. So, and certainly, I think Marine Le Pen is watching this election very closely to see what Europe will let her get away with come next year. And certainly Nigel Farage, who we know has very close ties with Viktor Orban, is also watching this election very closely. So, it's the consequences that should be levied on Viktor Orban if he manages to stay in power. That's the real question in my mind. Will he suffer some kind of negative result? Should he really destroy even the facade of a free and fair election here in Hungary by managing to stay in power? If he does, well, we're going to be holding on for another crazy ride going on into the future in Europe. And for all those who care and love democracy around the world, it's going to be a crazy several years.
And if he loses, will that embolden liberals in the UK and the US maybe? I don't think in the US, but definitely in the UK and France. Will that, if he loses and if he has managed to, will that perhaps cool down the fever of populism in these countries, right-wing populism?
Yes and no, because there'll certainly be an immediate euphoria on the part of left-leaning pro-democracy forces in Europe. But the real test will be how well Europe helps Peter Magyar dismantle the Orban system that he's created here, because simply getting Orban out of office is just the beginning. He has installed his loyalists in every single major institution throughout the country, from the judiciary to the educational system to the universities to the economy. Some say, according to some estimates, more than 20% of the Hungarian economy flows through companies owned by Viktor Orban and his close friends.
Hmm.
So it's not going to be an easy transition by any means to get the Orban system dismantled and put away for good. It's going to take a concentrated effort on the part not only of Peter Magyar, but his allies in Europe to get Viktor Orban out of office and then permanently out of office, permanently off the stage of Hungary's political public life. And so that's what I think we really should be looking for, us, those of us who care about democracy, care about freedom and fair elections. That's what we really should be looking for, is not just the immediate euphoria should Viktor Orban lose, but the long, hard work of rebuilding democracy in Hungary. That's going to take years, if not decades.
With the crisis right now in the Gulf and the rising energy costs, I wonder how much that is impacting Hungary and these elections. I suppose it is a pretty chilly winter, and the fact that Hungary is getting cheap gas from Putin is helping him a little bit. On the other hand, I'm not sure. Is there an impact of the crisis on these elections at
There
all?
hasn't there hasn't really been much of an impact for all of his attempts to put foreign affairs at the center of this election. It actually hasn't really moved the
Who's
needle when it
who's
comes to
who's
uh,
attempts?
Viktor Orban's attempts
Uh-huh.
to put foreign affairs at the center of the Hungarian election. It hasn't worked. Um,
What do you mean?
the real
How does he try to put the foreign affairs at the center of the election, saying what, that Peter Magyar is going to be bad with the US or and alienate Russia? What is he saying?
He's basically Viktor Orban has tried to say over and over again that Peter Magyar is in Volodymyr Zelensky's pocket.
Hmm.
If you walk around Budapest, all of the campaign posters show Volodymyr Zelensky's picture on them. It's almost as if he's running for office in Hungary
Oh, interesting.
rather than
Oh, that's
president of
wild.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
And in many of those posters, he's standing side by side with Peter Magyar, the opposition candidate. And so the message that Viktor Orban is trying to send is that Peter Magyar will send Hungarian forints, Hungarian money, to Ukraine to support the war effort, or even send Hungarian soldiers to fight on the front line. And that's sort of the scare message. That's the fear-based
He's been
message that
saying
he's been
that all
trying
of
to
these
use.
years, right? That these NATO globalist warmongers want to, fight against Russia. They want to start World War III. I remember he was saying that back in, 2022, 2023 as well.
That's exactly right. And you actually hit the nail right on the head there, which is that he's been saying that all these years. The problem is not that it's a big lie, and it is in fact a big and a lie. It's quite large. Peter Magyar has said over and over again he's not going to be sending Hungarian soldiers to Ukraine, and that's not part of the NATO agreement, the NATO alliance agreement. But the problem that Viktor Orban has faced in trying to convince the Hungarian electorate about this lie is that it's an old lie.
Hmm.
He's been saying it for so long that people are sort of they don't get afraid of it anymore. It doesn't inspire the great dread that it did in 2022 when the war was still fresh and nobody knew what the outcome of it would be. At this point, people are so used to the news coming out of Ukraine that they can't really get scared about it anymore. And so, no matter what Viktor Orban says about Peter Magyar's fake plans regarding Ukraine, it's prompted almost yawns on the part of the Hungarian electorate.
Mark, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
This is Borzu Deragahi of the Badlands podcast. You've been listening to Mark Lusteau of the Central European University, a professor of political science and an expert on the upcoming Hungarian elections. Those elections are coming up on April 12th. Watch the news and keep an eye out on this one. Thank you so much for listening in.